It's good clear light tonight, this evening. Now is the end of the day. Earlier today, first part of the day, I came here in the morning and shared that important email sent to us. Mark Wallace in the UK. God, I appreciate that email, and I'm sure thousands of other people did as well. Man, I hope more people mend relationships after hearing that email, don't you? And email us and share. It's funny, I was asked earlier today from a friend of mine, says, hey dude, like, what are you getting from all these emails? Seriously, they're so repetitive. And I had to explain to him flat out. I said, hey man, I'm getting knowledge. I'm getting a lot of knowledge that I otherwise wouldn't even have. What else do I get from reading everybody's experiences and knowledge is I understand more and more how thinking independently is important. And I also have learned, well, I learned previous, but here's one point that I wanted to get across that I've learned over the years is it's the children, it's the next generation that makes change. It's very difficult for adults to make change, immediate change globally, but it's children, it's the children that make the change. It's the next generation. And unfortunately, the dirtbags know that too, right? I first learned of that from a Syrian Christian doctor who grew up in Syria years ago, and he explained to me flat out that it was the education of the children that changes the world. And in those countries, especially Syria, other countries in the Middle East, all the children knew was growing up hating and warring, killing. And unfortunately, until the children are taught differently, that's how it's going to continue to go. So on that note, if I could somehow encourage every single person out there to share the honest truth with the children, do it however you can. I'm definitely not an ideal teacher. I can't give you the complete, full, confident recipe on how to deliver this fact, truth to children, but it's very, very important that you do. It's very important. That's how this topic will come to light across the board, accepted in an honest way. And also what comes along with this topic is the fact that we're being lied to, manipulated, and misled. And if there is a way to teach the children that fact, then it will change and the power will be taken back from the dirtbags, right? Anyway, before I start babbling too much, you'd think that was just a morning thing, huh? What do we got? Speaking of change, let's get the knowledge out there so that people have something to pass on to help that change. Title, I couldn't wait to leave. This is a recent email that's come in. So again, I gotta remember to crack open my old phones and get those other emails saved. Hi Steve, you can use my name in any info I share. I want the truth out. And even though my story, thank goodness, is not of a sighting, it still is adding more to the puzzle. First, a bit of background. My name is Zoe. I'm originally from London, UK. I'm not remotely outdoorsy, other than going to local parks back home like Hyde Park. So, coming to live in Washington State was a big change for this city girl. My husband Max and I decided to take a trip to the Merrimack Falls, which is located in Olympic National Park near Lake Crescent in Washington. This is back in 2013, and it's a beautiful sunny day. As I'm not someone that hikes, this is a pretty easy trail. As soon as we start on the walk, I have the weirdest feeling we are being watched. A really creepy feeling, and the sensation was coming from above us, up on the steep sides where trees/forest sections are. There are other people on the trail, so we're not alone. It's quite a tourist spot, but the whole time I'm super creeped out. I even start looking around to try and see what is out there watching. I don't feel any malice with the feeling, but I just an intensity of something keeping track of us. I tell Max that I feel really uneasy and that something is out there watching us. Anyway, we arrived at the falls, and after admiring it for a time, we decided to go back to the car. And I'm sure I started walking faster. I really needed to get out of there. As soon as we're out of the forest, I feel fine. I've been on other trails since, and I've never had that same feeling, which I'm relieved about. I did send you my website in a previous email with photos of what I label as a Bigfoot. I took those and I was overlooking Elwha River, Washington. I didn't notice the dark figure while taking them. Only once I got the photo on the computer and was zooming in. I admire what you're doing. I'm with you all the way. Kindest regards, Zoe Ahinger. Ahinger. All right, Zoe, thanks for that email. I may have opened that. I don't know if I don't. Your name doesn't sound familiar. I don't know. I don't think I've opened that original email yet. Again, if I remember to, I will. There's so many, Zoe. There's so many emails and so many photos too. And that's another thing on the photos. A lot of people send me a lot of photographs. And what I would like to suggest to every single one of you that wants to share a photograph through me, look at the photograph you're sending me and pretend you've never ever seen it ever before and you don't know what it is. And be honest with yourself. Try to distance yourself from the fact that you took that photo and you know what you saw it, but take a look at it. Picture being the public looking at it. And then think before you send it, all right? Because so many people send the most insanely fuzzy, distorted, what the F is that photo to me while claiming, here's a clear photo of Sabe or Sasquatch, here's a clear dogman photo. And they're not clear. I'm not being rude. I'm telling you the honest fact from somebody who's innocent, non-judgmental. When I look at the majority of these photos, I'm like, what the hell is it? And if I am going, what the hell is it? I kind of really don't want to have to go through all of the effort it would take me to go and copy that, load it on the program, put it in the email at the proper spot, fill it up, fill the screen, when 99.9% of the people watching are going to say, what the hell is that at the same time, right? Now, that doesn't go for everyone, all right? So don't get all knee-jerked upset and your emotions all dented because I said something like that about sending photos to me. That just goes out to everybody, not you, Zoe, but that is a fact. You have to really think about what you're sending the public before you do it, all right? Hopefully one day, well, actually we're working on a photograph that a few of us know of, that an old guy had, he's passed away now, of very clear photos of these beings here in BC. That's another topic though. Anyway, I'm babbling too much. You get my point. Let's get on to sharing some more information. Speak of the devil. Here's some photographs sent in. And all it is photographs. All right, let me see if I can do this. I can show you an example. All right, look at this. And I'm not being insulting. All right, it's just a fact. I appreciate the fact that these people go out of the way to send me the photos, but I look at this photo, I'm like, what the hell is it, right? So let's see if I can do it this way. Look at this. Here's one. Okay. Now, I'll try to hold that steady. It's forest. It's a dark shadow. All right? Okay. I don't know what I'm looking at. I see a dark shadow in the forest. There it is zoomed up. Is there anything you can see that I don't? Do you see what I mean? I am looking at that as a dark blob in the forest. Anybody else see any different? Now, if I took that photo and I seen that thing moving before I took it, I know exactly what I was looking at. Can't you see what I'm looking at? The thing was standing there looking at me, right? But unfortunately, by the time it gets to us, it's typically a dark blob in some green distorted bushes. It's unfortunate. Maybe one day we'll see a photo with the whites of their eyes, right? Maybe. All right, don't be insulted. I'm going to share your email. You see there's an email at the bottom of these photos. Hi, Steve. Listen to your channel for over a year now. I'm a big fan. I enjoy listening to all the stories. I'm always in search of knowledge. For the past few years, I've spent countless hours listening and studying the topic of Sasquatch, Sabe, ever since my encounter. It was probably 10 or so years ago in the Cascade Mountain Range, Oregon. I was camping with a group of people, and I woke up earlier than everyone in camp and decided to go down to the creek to fish for some trout. It was just turning daylight when I got to the spot where I was going to begin fishing. So shortly after I began, there was a creature across the creek, no more than 50 feet away, that began whooping. So, me, never hearing the sound before, I started mimicking the sound. Every time I whooped, I would whoop back at it. And this went on for a good 15 minutes. Every time I would move further down the creek, it would follow and stop right in front of me, but I could never see it, and it would begin whooping again. After 15 minutes of this, I started to feel creeped out, so I packed up my gear and headed back to camp, all the while feeling like I was being watched on the way back. I never said anything to anyone at camp because I had no idea what it was. It was about a year later, I was watching a show on Bigfoot, and I heard that whooping sound. That's when I put two and two together. After that, I began to research as much as I could about the big guy and gal. So that was my first encounter. I've had numerous in that area, but I'll save those for another time. Little did I know. That moment, along with others, between seeing the red eyes of 4 different sabes staring at me in the middle of the night, spying on me while I was taking a piss outside my tent, to running over my tent and damn near crushing me. Those encounters have ruined me. I was once carefree in the woods. I would spend weeks alone camping, enjoying life, but now I spend all my time with my head on a swivel while trying to enjoy my favorite thing on earth, nature in the woods. But enough about all that. What made me decide to write you was a question I had. Are the Sabe cannibals? I was recently in the woods with an old lady and stopped to let her check out the water from a bridge as we were passing by. Well, I smoked, and it was in the same area where I almost got crushed by a large bipedal figure years ago. So I noticed some trees that were pushed over in the shape of like a teepee, but they still had the roots attached. I found this very curious. While checking them out, I took a few photos. A couple days later, I decided to look at them and noticed a large, and I mean large, figure in the tree line. So I zoomed in on it, and there, to my amaze, was a huge man-like creature and what looks to be a very small Sasquatch baby in its mouth, and it looks like he's about to eat it. It's a blurry photo, so most people will probably try to discredit me. But I don't give a rat's ass what anyone thinks, so I'll try to attach it to this email. I'm not very tech savvy, so forgive me if it doesn't work. And if you're ever near the west side of Oregon, feel free to give me a holler. I'd love you to buy you a beer or do a little fishing. You're a stand-up guy, Stephen. You put into helping those affected by this crap. Yes, feel free to use my name, Matt. Okay, Matt, that's a hell of a story. It's a hell of an experience. Seeing as how it just worked out showing the dark things in the picture, I'll put these up right now, and it might save me a little time in the edit department later on, all right? Let's have a look at what we got. So, I'm guessing there's some of the trees. There's a few more trees. There's the other angle of the 3 trees. 3 or 4. There's a handful in there, isn't there? And there's the blob. Sorry, man, unless I'm missing something, that's all I'm seeing is a dark blob, not a hairy man, myself. As well, there's absolutely nothing there for me to recognize as any kind of a man, not alone its mouth, but that's just me, all right? Maybe I'm blind. Same with that one. I'm not seeing it. Nor that one. It's tough, right? It's a tough thing to do, taking these photos, especially when somebody saw what they saw, got a photo, and of course it doesn't turn out that clear for the rest of the world to see when they generously share it. Interesting experience, interesting report. And thanks for that email, man. Thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it. And do not take my reaction to your photo as wrong, as insulting as some other people have in the past. Even when I say heads up, I'm not being a dick, but this is what's going to happen when we post your pictures to the internet, okay? It's just being straight up like I'm talking to a friend. And even though I've taken that approach, some people have still acted like they're butthurt because I insulted them and belittled them when I didn't. I'm just stating out the honest facts, all right, you guys? What do we got? Here's another one. Sasquatch. Hello, sir. I'll get straight to the point. I was taught by my dad that Sasquatch or Bigfoot were real when I was a young child and growing up, but also that they are very quiet and peaceful creatures. When I encountered them for myself, I learned that they can be menacing, very loud, and terrifying. My first encounter that I'm aware of happened in northeast Washington, Barry County, near the Canadian border. I lived in what's called Boulder/Deer Creek Pass out of town. It's a very remote area, and we had a virgin ponderosa pine forest on the ranch we lived on and surrounded by Colville National Forest land. There was an A-frame cabin up in the woods that my step-brother and I would hike to when I was a teenager. He was 2 years younger than me. We decided to ask our parents if we could stay the night in that A-frame one night, and they allowed it. It was probably about a mile from our house in the forest of large ponderosa pine trees. We lived about 5 or 6 miles out of the small border town of Curlew. Anyway, that night in the A-frame, a terrible fear gripped both of us. We were trying to sleep in the loft at the top of the A-frame. It had a small window also in that little room. The door was broken, so it didn't shut it all the way, and it was very run down. An old ladder made of 2x4s went up to the loft we were in. This thing outside kept throwing the large wet pine cones that were heavy and dense at the roof of the A-frame. I knew what it was. I knew what it was that was doing it. I could see him in my head. It was the most scared I'd ever been, and so was Jason, my stepbrother. I know it may sound crazy, but it was like this thing could read our minds. It was a predator. That's all I knew. And we were its prey. I kept thinking and knowing that it might come in and take us, but it obviously didn't. It seemed like all night long it just kept throwing sticks and pine cones on the cabin roof, and the impression I got is that it didn't want us there. There was no way we were coming out of there until daylight and the throwing stopped. We were so scared we were paralyzed, heart beating out of my chest and gasping for breath, yet trying to stay silent without moving at the same time. Next thing you know, we wake up and it was morning. I know what it was, and I know it wasn't anyone playing a prank or anything like that. We didn't talk about it or tell our parents, thinking they wouldn't understand or really believe us. There was a game trail that we followed that led to this cabin. We liked to track this mother cougar and her cub because we had never seen a cougar and wanted to see one, and whenever there was mud or snow, we could see their tracks and we would follow as far as we could. We did this over the course of about 3.5 years. The winter after the summer that we stayed that night in the A-frame, we were walking the game trail. There was about 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. I couldn't believe what I was seeing at first when we came across huge, bipedal, giant human-like prints. They were about 6 feet apart, between strides and very large and wide. The snow had melted a little bit, so I couldn't see any definition like toes or anything, but I know my animal tracks, and there's only one thing this could be. It was as far as I could jump, as I jumped from one footprint into the next for several hundred yards, until we got to an area in the forest where it was rocky and not much snow on the ground, and it was spooky. We never went further than that area anyway because we would get that feeling that told us not to keep going. One time in the summer by myself, I did go deeper into that area, ended up getting scared as hell finally got out of there as quick as possible. Now I know why we would get that feeling of dread or fear or whatever was there. Finally, this other encounter happened to me shortly after I followed the Bigfoot trail, in his footsteps. It came to our house in the middle of the night, where my bedroom was, and I slept right next to, and even with a 6-foot long window, the roof of the house is only about 4 or 5 feet off the ground right there. This thing stepped onto the roof right above me as I was laying there in bed. Boom! Then about 6 feet across the ceiling again, boom! It stepped. Boom, boom, boom. It was so loud, it had to weigh like close to 1,000 pounds. I saw the same stride and pattern and thought about when I jumped from print to print in the snow, and I felt this thing knew I did that and was coming to mess with me. It was cold outside, like maybe 20 below zero, and this thing seemed to walk over to our chimney and stopped for a minute. Then it turned back around and walked back to where my bed was, and that was it. I didn't hear it again. I didn't hear it hit the ground, and I don't dare move or make a sound. We had rifles in the house, and the thought of me running to wake my dad up and get the guns while this thing was on the house entered my mind, but somehow knew that it would be able to enter the house and kill us all before we could kill it. I knew it was all powerful, like supernatural. I learned that when we stayed at the A-frame. The psychic experience that terrified me that I had with this thing that night in the cabin I'll never forget, nor will I ever forget the terror I felt when it walked on the roof of our house. Remember, I was laying right next to a huge window, and I knew this thing could reach right through it and grab me if it wanted to, and that it might. Also, we had dogs, and they stayed outside and always barked at anything that came around, but they just hid under the house and didn't bark at all at this thing. Nobody in the house moved or anything, and I woke up in the morning. I was so scared that night that I was shaking, trying not to move a muscle or make a sound, but my heart was beating so hard that I was making a gasping sound every time that I breathed in or out. I was just terrified. I asked my stepbrother Jason the next morning if he heard the Bigfoot get on the roof last night, and he said yes. That's the only time we ever spoke about it. It's amazing, isn't it? The only time you ever spoke about it. I asked my dad also, and he said yes, and it was never spoke of again. What the F? I don't know if they were just joking and that they really slept through it or what. It just wasn't comfortable to talk about, and I think I blocked it out for several years after that. I live on the Oregon coast now, and I heard one. I lived on a ranch surrounded by the Elliott State Forest. I was out in a field one misty night surrounded by the forest hills of a friend. The noise we heard sounded like huge trees falling over and over again real fast, like an impossible sound. We looked where the noise was coming from and didn't see any trees moving, but started to get really scared. My friend looked at me and said, "Grizzly bear." I said, "There ain't any grizzly bears in Oregon." He said, "There's not." And just looked like even more frightened as we both decided to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible and drove back towards the house. Felt like this thing was even chasing the vehicle. I still don't know how the hell it made such a loud sound so fast. It was crazy. The only way I could explain it was like the sound of something huge hitting a tree with another tree, only so fast like a machine gun almost. Also, I started hiking and picking edible mushrooms to sell for money and covered a lot of territory. I felt like I was followed, snuck up on, and watched on many occasions. One time up a gated road, I heard a large branch snap and felt that this was a warning not to go that way. So went to the other side of the mountain, I found a footprint on an elk trail. There was only one print, but it was wide, long, and smashed the pebbles into the ground like it was very heavy. I took a picture with my phone and my foot next to it for comparison. I also seen a trail of footprints of 3 individuals here in the county forest. One large one about 17 or 18 inch feet, the other one about 12 inch feet, and the other was the same size as mine, 10.5 size down her boot. All prints were very wide at the front and narrow or skinny at the heel and mid portion. I think they're trying to walk on their heels to hide their identity, but it was in a ravine and obvious to me what they were. I saw many of these prints, and I only visited that area once. I could clearly see where the 3 of them had walked through, trying to hide in the ravine and even trying not to leave toe prints. But the ground was soft and they were heavy. The biggest one hit his toes. The best of the three, most of his prints just looked like deep, long, narrow holes in the ground, whereas narrow heel would sink the deepest. Strange things. I've studied extensively about them, as I am one of those people with no one to talk to about it, and it's tough knowing these things are out there when almost everyone I know go around just laugh at it or won't take the subject seriously. Thanks so much for doing what you do. I listen to a lot of the emails you read and I really enjoy it. Thank you again, Steve. You're the man. I would like to share more with you about what I have learned through my obsessive studies, mainly about stories from Native Americans and what they know of their history. I'll just say it now. The Umatilla Indians called them the stick people. At night, the Sasquatch would come around and poke their tents with sticks, and anyone who moved or made a sound, they would take. They also would steal their drying salmon and other food. The people would lay as still and silent as possible as to not be taken by the stick people at night. Also, Siatika, or something like that they were called. Some natives say there was once a great war between these beings and that they used great clubs and stones to fight the others in the war. Many tribes viewed them as another tribe and said that they had a language. If you haven't heard about the guy who was half Bigfoot, he has now passed on. But his mother was kidnapped, impregnated, and brought back to humanity when she was sick and dying. Nursed back to health, she had the baby and raised him. I saw a picture of him as an adult, but I can't find it online anymore. The guy was not normal, shorter than most, big jaws and teeth, and was somewhat deformed. Died of some complications at a relatively young age that had to do with his deformities. I believe he was probably between 30 and 50 years old, if I remember correctly. Wow. Well, there you go. I swear my stories are true. That happened to me, and they do seem to kind of like follow you around once you have an encounter. At least me, and I've heard other people say the same thing. Or maybe we were just aware of what others are not, so we notice things they wouldn't. I've seen footprints deep in the mud and brush, and small trees that have been twisted and broke. Only one thing can do that with that size of shrubs. Something with massive muscles and human-like hands. Others may not think twice about seeing things that they wouldn't even think about. Think twice about. I've been in nature a lot of my life since a very young age, fishing, hunting, hiking, tracking animals. I haven't gone into the woods now for almost 3 years. I don't want to get back out there, but I feel like I tried my luck enough and was lucky. I don't want my luck to run out and end up being a snack for one of these big guys. It's a little scary. That's why I blocked it out and ignored it for so long. But I can't anymore. It's far too real now, with more memories and situations that only add up to one thing. I even heard one howl one night. I howled first and answered back. The last thing I was expecting. And I was camping in the woods in a tent with my girlfriend and no gun. After that, I started hearing sticks breaking outside the tent. Coyotes started howling, and I could hear something running around outside the tent, and the coyotes kept howling. They have something to do with coyotes. I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe they steal their food or something, but it's definitely something. They mimic animal sounds too. Screech owls, coyote, elk, birds, and probably lots of others as well. If my name really matters, okay, you can share my name if you want. Govinda Strong. I stand with you on this matter, sir, and thank you, and all the good people out there that know what we're going through and understand how difficult it can be. All right. Thanks for that email. That's a lot of time you took out to write that to it and share with us. We appreciate it. And I'll touch on the coyote thing, what I think. I wonder if possibly the coyote sounds are a sound that they can make with ease, and they can really mimic them very perfectly. Possibly, I don't know. I'm just a thought, because of all the animals they could pick to associate with and hang out with and be at the same place as, why would they pick a frickin' coyote? Why would they pick a grizzly bear or a pack of wolves? Right? I don't know. I don't get it. I honestly don't understand the coyote connection. But I'm leaning towards it as possibly one of the easier wildlife sounds for them to mimic clearly. Possibly. Let's go one more, then I'm out of here. Maybe I'll hit the shop this evening, you never know, and do another one. Sasquatch encounter possible theory. Steve, first I'd like to start out by acknowledging the importance of what you're doing. Thank you for having a platform for people to share their own very personal experiences with the unknown. I live in Idaho. And although I don't have a story of my own personal encounter with a Sasquatch, I'm aware of 2 people who do, and was actually present at the moment in time when it occurred. I was told about the encounter the very next morning while we were camping in the woods above Crouch, Idaho, over some strange coffee and a quick camp stove breakfast. I heard something. We were all camping by the Payette River, and in the middle of the night, one of my friends had to leave the tent. She was near the tent and about to go back into it when she felt a cold chill that was not the wind, and something made her slowly turn around. She said she felt it before she saw it, that feeling of being stared at. And when she did see it, she said she froze. She said it felt like an animal not wanting to be seen by a predator. She said she felt like an animal not wanting to be seen by a predator, like the way deer will freeze and not move. She said she was looking across the river to the other side of the riverbank about 30 feet away, and she could see a massive figure. Shit, I read this. Sorry, you guys. Read it. I must be getting tired. Okay, this one's a little too long. Let's see if we can find a short one. I don't know what I'm hearing off to the side. I'm hearing something back there. They're going to enhance it in the audio later on. Titled Time to Share. It's always time to share, especially today. It's time to share. Let's get it going. Hi, Steve. Thank you for what you do. It's so very important to many, including myself. I've hesitated for almost a year to share my experiences. Today is the day. Beautiful. I apologize for the length of this email, but it will include 3 experiences from the age of 16 to 57. The first encounter, the scariest, took place in southern NB, New Brunswick, at a lakeside cottage we went to since I've been 2. It was late September, and I recently got my license. I've been in a town in McAdam, approximately 40 minutes from where our cottage was located. It's roughly 15 to 20 minutes off a secondary highway into a logging road, which brought you to a series of parking lots, fields basically used for parking, alongside of 3 rail tracks. Over the rail tracks, you would proceed down a slight embankment through a meadow, through a treed path that forked to the right of our cottage. It was past 12:30 at night and extremely foggy. Being a new driver and knowledgeable of moose season, I was fearful of encountering one on the road. Finally made it to the parking area, only to realize I had left my flashlight at the cottage and only a dim glow from the cottage window through the trees off in the distance was faintly visible in the pitch blackness of the foggy night. It was custom with their family to flash the headlights and or honk the horn for someone to meet you with a light. No power at this location, only oil lamps. So I began to honk and flash my headlights. My mother and I were the only ones at the lake, whereas school had started and hunting season had not started. I also want to mention my ride was a 73 Ford LTD. I think it's equipment. I think I hear equipment knocking in the distance. It's just kind of bugging me. I keep hearing the back of my head. Moving forward, sorry about that. As I flashed my headlights and honked the horn with no response, I began to become concerned. Was my mom okay? No response was odd. The lights would have been visible and the horn would have been heard, but nothing. I dreadfully pondered getting out and making my way in the dark, but a chicken shit 16-year-old girl persisted with the lights and the horn. Mistake. All of a sudden, the back of the car lifted up until I tilted forward in my seat. I was shocked, bewildered, and fear poured over me with iciness. The car dropped, then it raised and dropped 2 more times. I froze. I cannot describe the absolute horror I felt. I thought only stay or run. I opened the car door and ran. Holy shit. I don't think my feet hit the ground. Over 3 sets of tracks through the meadow and up the treed path to her cottage. I fell to the floor once in the cottage. My mother sat in a chair reading a book. She heard nothing or saw no headlights. Impossible. I later went down with her to turn off the lights and shut the door. I also sprained my ankle while running. I never knew what it was, but shortly after, we sold our cottage. I've not returned since. I still am affected to this day, and only lately thought of what it could have been. How close was I to it? In 2014, I lived a short time in Wetaskiwin, in Alberta. I decided to go for a drive one night on the back road surrounding the town. It was fall, and the moon was magnificent that night. I pulled over just to sit and find peace amongst the farming fields, turned off my truck and lights, not to give notice of my presence to a farmhouse down the road. I looked down to get out a cigarette, and when I looked up, I saw 2 red eyes crossing the road. Ahead of my truck, maybe 12 to 15 feet in front of me. I saw no body, just eyes in the dimly lit night. Not pitch dark, Alberta dark, LOL. What struck me the most were the eyes, red. Did not go up and down as they would in a walking manner, but straight across as I went from one side of the road to the other. I started the truck and left as quick as possible, barely able to breathe and gripped with that similar fear I had felt so many years back. The third was outside Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, winter 2021. I recently built out a camper truck deal for nomading. Oh, I don't know about the built part, but for nomading, okay. I got to a place called Cow Lake. I parked for the day on the east side of the lake down as a service road. I have a large dog and had been barking all day at something I could not see. He acted so weird on this occasion that I could not make out what his response was to what he was seeing. He'd wag his tail, then it would drop and he'd start backing up. It happened numerous times. I had a very uncomfortable feeling, but passed it off as being a scaredy cat, still nervous of the woods. I got in my camper to have a nap and the dog would not settle. The burden of something grew, and I decided to pack up and leave. It had lightly snowed that morning, and as we drove out, I could see my tracks were the only ones. As I drove closer to the entry of this abandoned lease/service road, I saw the gates had been closed, no tracks. Never thought too much, but I did feel somewhat creeped out. I was bothered by it, so I went back the next day. I can only describe my experience as spiritual. I got a severe headache as soon as I entered the area we camped at. I had a mind-splitting voice that gave me the impression to leave, and the other half of the impression left me with the thought, the veil is thinning. I suffered for a week and the most insane headache I ever had. I may have got 5 to 6 hours sleep that whole week. Could not sleep. It pounded over in my head. The veil is thinning, leave. I returned 3 weeks later, stubborn and becoming a new nomad. I felt I had nowhere to go if I was too scared to camp. I entered and left the area on that third visit due to a piercing metallic whistle that confirmed my unwelcome presence. I will forward that video after this email. I'm lost now. Too scared to travel BC or Alberta, wooded areas at all. But what I do know, Steve, what do I do? Oh, what do I do now, Steve? What do I do? I made this commitment and feel safer in a city, and I dislike cities. Thank you for reading and sharing my experiences, thinking there is no answer for my fear. Thinking there is no answer for my fear now. Betty Stanix. Betty, thanks for the email. Hope I read it smooth. Get a little awkward. So you guys know my ears ring like a MF a lot of the time. Sometimes fierce, sometimes not so fierce. It's only due to a couple of almost lethal hunting accidents I've experienced while guiding over the years. Gunshots right beside my head from some mishaps. So when I have that ringing on the go and then I think I hear something off to the side, which I've been hearing something off to the side this past 10-15 minutes, it affects my reading greatly, I feel. But anyway, what do you do now? You go with your gut instincts. You go where you want to go. You go where you're curious of going. You go where you think it's beautiful and you want to see and check out. And you take baby steps. And you rely on your sixth sense. Get a dog. For sure get a dog if you're going to be alone. And the dog will be your clear sixth sense. Period. And trust the dog. And go anyway until it doesn't feel right, and then just turn around and leave right away. And that's what you do. Because if you don't, then you're going to be held hostage in a place that makes you miserable, and you're going to miss out on a bunch of life's enjoyable rides. You know? And that kind of sucks. So, anyway. Sure it's peaceful down here, isn't it? I can't wait to run my underwater camera down the river when I got time and videotape what's living down there right now. Pretty cool spot. I don't understand. This is public land right here. I don't understand why there isn't more people down here, honestly. Even when we were swimming here all summer long, very, very rarely were people down here. And I'm like, surely this isn't a secret down here, you know? I mean, obviously was a pile of bears here all summer. I guess that might have had something to do with it, but there's just not many people come down here at all. There's about, I don't know, what is this? I could be home on the quad in about, it's probably 4 minutes to get here on the quad. But anyway, I should wrap this up. I gotta get going. Get home, get some dinner in me, get more things done so I can take off for a few days elk hunting with some people here on the island. And that'll be great. And I'm gonna get a lot of videoing done when I'm there as well. Be safe out there, you guys.